The future of State of Decay 2 and the critical response weapon DLC. That was the subject of an Undead Labs stream on the 17th of July, and that's going to be the subject of this video. Hello everyone, Fox here, and that's what we're going to be going over, the various weapons in the critical response pack. There may have been one or two that they didn't show, but we'll go over the ones that I did see. And then I chose a few snippets from the overall 55-minute stream that is going to discuss the future of State of Decay 2, and hopefully by the thumbnail you can tell that I'm not super happy. I'm also not super mad. I think the base game of State of Decay 2 is pretty good, but the post-launch support has really been hit or miss, with more misses than hits. Anyways, let's get started. First up, we've got the police sniper rifle. Yes, indeed, that is its name. And these are the critical response themed weapons, and that refers to stuff like police officers. So a lot of this stuff is going to be police gear, rescue equipment, etc. And I should add that Undead Labs says that this will be released within a month's time, so 30 days or less. Anyway, the police sniper rifle. The theme of my criticism of these weapons is that they're really no different than existing weapons that we have. Now, the police sniper rifle is, well, a sniper rifle, and it fires 5.56mm bullets, which it might be the only one of its kind, but we already have sniper rifles, and the fact that it shoots 5.56 rounds, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It's not a meaningful change. Next up, though, we've got the Police M590A1, and this is a shotgun that I have no idea what makes it different. At first, I thought the aim was just tighter on this weapon, but it actually just has an advanced choke on it. So I have no idea what makes this different from another shotgun. Once again, doesn't have a meaningful difference. Next up, we've got the high-angle rescue hatchet, and, well, it's a melee weapon. As you know, melee weapons aren't super different from one another. The dismemberment and speed is pretty high, but it's probably going to feel like every other axe that you get your hands on. Next up is Backup Bossy, which I believe is the first 9mm revolver in the game. However, does that really matter? Does that really make much of a difference when you already have 22 caliber revolvers? The advantage of the 9mm round is that it's really cheap, but it's not as cheap as the 22 caliber rounds. So I really don't think that this weapon is going to make a difference. Next was the Metal Nightstick, which is, well, another melee weapon, so it is likely to feel like other blunt weapons. Its stats seem to be a bit below average as well, so I think it will be rather unremarkable. After that, you had the Military Riot Club, and not only is this just another melee weapon, but it also looks like kind of a bad melee weapon. The impact and knockdown is pretty low, and so is the ease of use. I don't think I would ever want to use this weapon. Fortunately, things start to look up with the introduction of the MP5 SSD, a fully automatic submachine gun that uses 9mm rounds, but most importantly of all, it has an integrated silencer built into it. The integrated silencer means it gains all the benefits of a silencer with none of the penalties, namely the loss in durability per shot. So this weapon should be worthwhile to use. However, if you do have the Heartland DLC, there already is a submachine gun 9mm with integrated suppressor. After that, we have the RC9 Police Carbine, which is kind of a light marksman-style rifle, similar to the 1022 and its two variants, the Exterminator's 1022 and the Prepper's 1022. The RC9 fires 9mm rounds, but as I said, the much more common 1022 rifles are available and their ammunition is cheaper, so this is not going to make a difference. After that, you've got the Police Knife, and it's a close combat weapon. Close combat weapons do not have stats. They're all exactly the same, so it's purely cosmetic. Speaking of cosmetics, that's basically what the G34 is. This is an ordinary 9mm pistol, very similar to all the existing 9mm pistols. I have no idea what makes it different. Then you've got the UMP SMG, a fully automatic 45 caliber submachine gun. There are other automatic 45 caliber weapons, but there's not a whole lot of them, so this one is slightly more welcome. But then along came the SWAT 416, a fully automatic rifle shooting the 5.56 rounds, making it pretty much identical to all the other rifles that shoot the 5.56 rounds. And as a result, it's going to be added into the game and make no difference whatsoever. Then you got the Rescue Knife, another cosmetic item because, as I said, close combat weapons don't have stats. Finally, we'll close out the weapons with the G26, a very lightweight 9mm pistol, which does make it a lot more interesting because it only weighs 1 pound. And that makes it very useful for people using the marathon skill because they are trying to stay as light as possible. Anyways, my conclusion on these weapons, therefore the Critical Response DLC pack, is that I'm just not impressed. I just don't care. I'm going to give it the big meh. And that's because these weapons do not change the way that you play State of Decay 2. They're not interesting weapons with meaningful mechanics. Is it important for weapons in State of Decay that are added to have interesting mechanics? I would say the answer is yes, because State of Decay 2 is not a looter shooter. It's also not a live service game like Fortnite or Warframe. Those games thrive on a constant trickle of content. State of Decay is a zombie sandbox simulation. Expanding the simulation with new enemies, new mechanics, new areas to explore, that's what a game like State of Decay 2 would thrive on. The last time that they added some genuinely interesting weapons was during the Zed Hunter DLC with the crossbows and the biochemical consumables. Anyways, let's listen to some of the highlights of the stream. I'll let you hear what they say, and then I'll tell you what I think. First, they commented about not ending support for State of Decay 2.
So we want to sort of get into that. We're not... the product director is not a position that exists because we're planning on stopping the product. Product director exists because we want to do some cool...
So there you go, confirmation for ongoing support for State of Decay 2. Then they went on to talk about why they're making the Critical Response DLC.
It's sort of the epitome of choice, really. Plus, it's something that we can do without being held up by, like, oh, we've got to test this all-new AI feature, or we had to rebuild this section of the map to fix that issue, and so now we have to test the whole area of the map. It's low friction for us, and so we can use it to sort of drop an update at a regular cadence.
Let's get real here. Low friction, that's a euphemism for low effort. That's what they consider these DLCs like Critical Response, and I would agree, they clearly are low effort. I don't know why Undead Labs wants this quote-unquote regular cadence of post-launch support. State of Decay 2 is not a live service game. It doesn't need regular updates. Instead, what State of Decay 2 needs are updates of substance, things that expand the simulation. Regular updates with little weapons and trinkets, that's fine for stuff like Fortnite. That's fine for stuff like Warframe. Those games thrive off of constant, small updates. That's not the kind of game that State of Decay is. This prioritization of regular but meaningless updates just seems extremely misguided. Next, they briefly reflect on the different types of content that they've created for different kinds of players in State of Decay 2.
I will say that we are looking at a variety of systems, right? We've got people who really love that core gameplay loop. They want to get into that game and have it feel a little bit fresh, a little bit different, but really just go through the whole thing. And other people want to go for, like, I really want to just, play in a different way. I don't want to have it be like before, but with a new thing. I want to have a different way to engage with the game. The Zed Hunter update was kind of like that. It really sort of brought the focus around to noise and stealth and Blood Plague, and sort of it gave you a different spin or an option to play the game differently. So content like that is content that we're obviously looking into. I can't talk about any specifics today, but we want to be able to extend the game for every kind of player.
Once again, this is extremely misguided. You can't make everyone happy, especially when you're a company like Undead Labs where you don't have the resources of a huge AAA company. The more limited you are, the even less realistic it is to make everyone happy. Apparently, they're looking into more DLC like the Zed Hunter update. That was one of their best updates. Why would you just be looking into more awesome transformative updates like Zed Hunter? That should be a priority. That's what really advances the game in a positive direction, not these little DLCs that add meaningless weapons. A steady trickle, a regular cadence of meaningless content is not going to improve State of Decay 2. Anyways, next the subject was about tethering, a multiplayer mechanic.
There are a couple questions about tethering, which is always a fun topic.
Yeah.
I can't promise anything because it's a technical limitation.
It is.
We are working with an engine that we did not build in-house. And there's some things we just can't change. That said, there are also bugs. The game has bugs, we know it. And some of those bugs are around tethering, and we are trying to crack down on them and really squeeze it into working the way it's supposed to.
It should come as no surprise that tethering is here to stay. It is one of the most disappointing elements of State of Decay 2. No one imagined playing State of Decay 2 together and being chained to the host. But one thing the Nightmare Zone revealed is that the game can't even spawn all the enemies in and show them all. They got these pop-in spawns as you're driving around, and I can't imagine what it would be like if all 4 of the players went in different directions and the game had to generate zombies for each separate player. Anyways, they also address players' desire to recruit the saved community members into currently active communities.
So we've got a question about when can we recruit survivors from previous communities. Right now, the only way that you can do that is when you are starting a new community after having completed an old whatever it is, the legacy arc on a previous community. And I don't know if we have any plans at the moment to add an option in-game to allow you to recruit a survivor while you're in the middle of a game.
This is a feature that should have been in the game from day one because it's such an obvious thing that players would want. It is no surprise at all that people want to play with their entire community, not just 3 when you begin a new save file. This is a must-have feature in State of Decay 2, and it should have been in the game already. But another thing they addressed was custom difficulty through the concept of difficulty sliders.
Like the whole Choose Your Own Apocalypse update was definitely about like how do you want to engage with us? How hard do you want the game to be? How challenging do you want the simulation to be? The trick with the sliders, though, is that it's very easy to create a combination that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like it's really easy to create a situation that you don't realize you can't win in. So the whole point of the doing Choose Your Own Apocalypse was that we took all those like internal tuning variables and all of the preluding stuff and all of the sort of like zombie combat modifications and the durability modifications, and we sort of tuned them so we could actually test them. Creating sort of a wide open like at your own risk kind of thing is it would require a lot of UI work just to expose all the stuff, and obviously that's work we would have to do, and we're not confident that we would be able to do it in a way that players can actually have fun with, as opposed to having a billion checkboxes and sliders, and you don't know what combinations work and don't.
Right.
So if we can find a way to make it happen in the long run, yeah, definitely. It's not on the short-term roadmap just because the sort of overwhelming complexity of like how would we ever possibly test it.
Right.
Now, I don't want to see any further customization of difficulty than we already have, and that's because I don't want the relatedness of the community to be diminished. There's already this disconnect when someone says, oh man, State of Decay 2, it's really giving me a hard time. Those juggernauts are really something else. But then you find out that he's surviving in Standard Zone. Well, from a Nightmare Zone player, it's hard for me to imagine that. And it feels like we are basically playing different games, even though we are both playing State of Decay 2. What's more is I have never imagined survival games to be customizable in terms of the survival experience. I've always imagined survival games to demand you to play up to the game's level rather than letting you determine what that level is. So I am against difficulty sliders. I'm against any further breakdown of the existing difficulties. Next, they make some strange comments about Heartland that kind of annoyed me.
I will say that we built Trumbull Valley in Heartland as a standalone side to the game because it was such a complicated thing that touched all the game systems. We wanted to see like, all right, like can we do NPC story? Can we do like recruitable like but well-designed crafted characters?
Whoa. Hold on a second. Let's not pat ourselves on the back here. Calling the Heartland characters well-crafted? Well-written? The characters in Heartland are what you consider the very minimum, the bare minimal requirement for a playable character. Their stories end as abruptly as they appear, and the character relationships that they build in the beginning and the end, they just evaporate instantly. There's also just this incredibly awkward lack of conversation when conversation is expected. For example, if you take Captain Logan and Chavez out, both characters who lost their entire military unit, Logan will try to console Chavez, giving him some words of wisdom about coping with loss, and you'd think Chavez would say something back, but he's completely silent. And you might say, well, maybe he's just taking it in. Well, if you take Malik and Keisha out, Malik will relate a funny story about high school with Keisha, and she doesn't say anything. Heartland is filled to the brim with just these abrupt conclusions to stories that are unresolved, and there's so many questions, not even super top secret questions. Just questions like, why not talk about the origin of the network? Why not talk about what happened to Marcus and the crew? What happened to Job? Why isn't Job with the Wilkersons? So give me a break here. Let's not pat ourselves on the back and talk about how Heartland characters were well crafted. That is a joke. Anyways, let's move on to the subject of rain and weather.
I also saw some people asking earlier about snow and rain and weather effects.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually a funny thing. I actually asked our audio team, like, hey, what if we just added, like rain? And the audio team was like, okay. Do you want to pay us to re-record every single sound as wet? And then you want to spend all the memory to load all the wet sounds and then transition to wet to dry? And I was like, maybe. Can we cost it out? So that's definitely on the scales of balance of product versus business.
I don't mean to get sassy here, but I think it calls for it. People have come to accept that State of Decay 2 is not a highly polished, well-crafted game. It works, and it's fun, but it's not polished, and it's not what you'd consider well-crafted. So we don't need you to go the extra distance and create unique sound effects for rain on every possible surface. We don't need you to make wet textures for every surface in the game. Just put up an overcast sky, put on a nice screen filter, some little droplets falling from the sky. Don't even make wet textures. Leave the textures dry and give us some stock rain sounds. Nothing fancy. It doesn't have to be fancy. We're not expecting fancy, but rain would absolutely improve the mood and the repetitive look of State of Decay dramatically. Yes, even rain with effort that one might consider low friction would still be sufficient. Anyways, there's one last subject that they talked about that I want to discuss, and that was Daybreak and prestige points.
Oh yeah, prestige. Like, how do you get more prestige and evaluating whether we're going to add another way that isn't just go back into Daybreak? That is actually a topic of conversation. We think prestige is actually like a really cool way to expose new content to people, and if we can figure out how to integrate it into some of our future stuff without just tying it exclusively to Daybreak, then that'll be great. But we don't have any concrete plans at this time that we can talk about.
Oh man, don't get me started about prestige points in Daybreak. The reason why people are asking for alternative ways to earn prestige points is because Daybreak is actual garbage. It is the worst DLC that Undead Labs has put out, hands down, in both State of Decay games. It's a highly abusive DLC that asks you to pay money for the privilege to work at McDonald's doing repetitive tasks with uncooperative coworkers for a miser amount of Monopoly money. It abuses your time for terrible payouts. It takes away your rewards for no purpose at all other than to make you play the game mode longer. It asks you to use ammunition that forces you to come back to the game mode if you want to continue using the weapons. And it is an extremely repetitive, low-effort, buggy mess of a game mode. It is crap. And I make sure to tell every single person I come across who has not already bought Daybreak to save their money from this abusive relationship. And I will make a call to arms to all of you who have played Daybreak and recognize it to be the massive garbage that it is, to do the same. Do not allow your friends to get caught up in Daybreak until Undead Labs fixes it, because Daybreak is actual garbage. And that's why people are asking for an alternative way to earn prestige points, so they don't have to go into a game mode, an abusive game mode that disrespects you and your time. Daybreak is unacceptable garbage. Well, at any rate, that is that. The Critical Response DLC weapons and some of the talking points during the 55-minute long stream. Let me know what you think. Do you agree? Maybe you think I'm being too harsh. Tell me down in the comment sections. But until next time, like this video if it was informative, subscribe for future State of Decay 2 content. Of course, remember that you don't have to be good to get good.